I pressed play and heard my own name followed by laughter. At first I thought the sound came from the street, maybe a neighbor's TV, but it was too sharp, too familiar. It was my husband's laugh, then my daughter's, then my son's. They were laughing at me. My name is Elaine. I'm 52 years old, mother of 2, married for nearly 30 years. I've spent half my life holding this family together with dinners, bills, and forgiveness. The night it all cracked started like any other. Garlic bread in the oven, a pot of pasta boiling, my son humming to the radio while I wiped the counter. Warm light from the kitchen lamp brushed across the plates I'd set out. For a moment, it felt safe, ordinary, even gentle. Then, while looking for a song on his tablet, I saw an unnamed audio file. I clicked it without thinking. My voice came through, trembling, pleading, from last month's family meeting. I'd been crying about money, about feeling unheard. And then came their laughter again, looping back, louder this time. "Mom's losing it," my son said. "She's just dramatic," my daughter replied. My husband's chuckle landed last, deep and casual. "Let her talk. She'll forget tomorrow." I stood frozen by the counter. The smell of toasted bread filled the kitchen, suddenly heavy and sour. Every sound, the ticking clock, the bubbling pasta, seemed to mock me, too. My hand shook so badly I nearly dropped the tablet. I pressed pause, but silence didn't bring relief. It only made space for the echo still spinning inside my head. I replayed it once more. Each word hit differently now. Every sigh, every pause they'd twisted into comedy. They'd recorded me when I was begging them to stop arguing about money. They'd turned my pain into their evening entertainment. I wanted to scream, to storm into the living room and throw the tablet at them, but something inside me stopped. I looked around. The plates, the flickering stove light, the little notes on the fridge where I'd written reminders to pay the gas bill and buy milk. I'd built this house out of effort and patience. They'd built a secret out of me. My throat tightened. My first thought wasn't anger. It was shame. How long had they been doing this? How many nights had my sadness been a private show? The realization cut deep. The people who should have protected me saw me as a joke. I turned the tablet screen dark and set it down carefully beside the sink. The pasta overcooked, soft and swollen, but I didn't care. I walked through the quiet hallway toward the dining table, running my fingers over the chair backs, one by one, like I was counting ghosts. In that moment, I noticed something strange. The laughter in the recording wasn't cruel in tone. It was casual, as if my pain had become normal background noise. That hurt more than open cruelty. It meant they no longer heard me at all. I sat down and stared at the food I'd cooked for them. I thought of every grocery list I'd written, every check I'd signed, every time I'd paid the power bill while they promised to reimburse me and never did. Even our finances were lopsided. I'd always carried the invisible weight. Now I saw how deep that imbalance ran. It wasn't just money. It was respect. I whispered under my breath, "Not yet." I wasn't ready to confront them. I needed to understand what I was really facing. I wrapped the bread in foil, turned off the stove, and wiped the counter one last time. My body moved like routine could still protect me, but something inside me had shifted forever. Before bed, I went back to the tablet. I renamed the file, typing slowly so my hands wouldn't shake. Proof 1. Then I locked it with a password they'd never guess. I didn't know it yet, but that simple act, saving the evidence, was the start of everything that came after. Nobody looked up when I entered the kitchen. The morning light came through the blinds, thin and cold. My husband was already at the table, scrolling through his phone. My daughter stirred her cereal like she was watching paint dry. The house smelled faintly of burnt toast, but no one moved to fix it. I waited for someone to say something, anything about last night, the recording, the laughter. But the silence spread, thick and strange, like everyone had rehearsed it. I poured coffee, listening to the quiet drip against porcelain. "Did anyone sleep?" I asked. No one answered. I tried again. "We were all here last night, weren't we?" Still nothing. That silence told me everything I needed to know. They'd decided to pretend nothing had happened, and I was supposed to play along. I sat down at the table and looked at the unopened mail beside the sugar jar. I'd been the one paying most of those bills, utilities, the mortgage, even my daughter's car insurance. I remembered the last grocery receipt from yesterday, $142.56 for food they wouldn't touch if it wasn't arranged neatly on plates. Every dollar I spent had become a quiet payment for peace. I buttered the toast, though it was already black around the edges. The smell clung to the air, sharp and bitter. "You're burning it," my husband murmured, not looking up from his phone. I smiled faintly. At least something's reacting. He frowned, confused, but still didn't meet my eyes. I tore a piece of the toast, chewed, and tried to taste normal. My heart beat too fast for a quiet morning. I slid a small folded note under my coffee cup. On it, I'd written 5 words. Who recorded that meeting? I didn't sign it. I didn't need to. I just waited. My daughter stood to refill her glass. She glanced at the cup but didn't lift it. Maybe she saw the note. Maybe she didn't care. My husband left for work without finishing his coffee, muttering something about traffic. The front door closed with that dull sound that always followed our arguments. For a long time I sat there listening to the house settle. The refrigerator hummed, the clock ticked. Every sound felt louder now that love had left the room. By mid-morning, I started washing the dishes they'd left behind. The plate I'd given my daughter still had crumbs on it, shaped like teeth marks. I stared at them longer than I should have. The smallest things carried weight now. I caught my reflection in the kitchen window, pale face, tired eyes, robe tied too loosely. For a second, I thought I saw my mother there, the same quiet endurance she used to wear. I hated that. I'd promised myself I'd never let life shrink me like that. At 9:30 a.m., the phone buzzed with a payment reminder for the gas bill. I stared at it until the screen dimmed. Another quiet debt, another small proof that everything in this house depended on my exhaustion. I opened the fridge and took out milk just to keep moving. The smell of it, cold, fresh, faintly sour, filled the space. It made me think of mornings years ago when laughter had been real, when breakfast meant something more than duty. I used to hum while frying eggs. I used to feel needed. Now, I felt like furniture. The note under the cup remained untouched. No one asked, "What's this?" No one laughed nervously or tried to explain. I started realizing that indifference hurts more than betrayal. Betrayal at least acknowledges your worth. Silence erases it. I sat again, tracing the ring of coffee that had formed beneath the cup. My fingers felt numb. I wanted to cry, but I didn't want to give them that again, not even in memory. I whispered, "I see you all." That wasn't a threat. It was a reminder to myself. If they could watch me without care, I could watch them back, with purpose this time. Every action, every glance, every unspoken agreement between them would become evidence in my mind. The morning dragged toward noon. The burnt smell lingered. The note remained unread. I cleaned the table like I always did, placing everything back in order. My daughter's laughter floated faintly from her room an hour later. Casual, careless. It hit me then. They'd moved on, while I was still trapped in the moment they created. By noon, I wasn't sure who loved me for real. They were talking about me again, this time in real time. The words came through the half-open door, carried by that flat morning quiet that made every whisper sound sharper. I froze at the hallway corner, close enough to see the mirror's edge reflecting my hand shaking against the wall. "She's losing it," my husband said. My daughter laughed under her breath. "Let her think she's smart." Then the phone buzzed on speaker, a third voice joining in, my sister's. "You have to keep an eye on her. She's not stable." The air felt too thin to breathe. I pressed my palm flat against the mirror frame to steady myself. My reflection stared back, ghost-like, the same woman who'd once run this house, paid every bill, balanced every late fee and grocery list, now hiding from her own family. I waited until the voices faded. Then I slipped into the hallway and found the phone left on the console table. The screen still glowed faintly, a call on mute. I could hear faint laughter before it clicked off. At lunch, they acted normal, passing salt, asking about errands. I nodded and smiled as if my stomach wasn't twisting. But I noticed details now. The way my husband kept his phone face down. The way my daughter locked hers with a new code. That night, I sat alone at the kitchen table. The clock read 9:15 p.m. The fridge hummed in the silence. I opened my laptop and checked our Wi-Fi camera history. Several entries had been deleted. That shouldn't be possible unless someone had access. I remembered my husband insisting last month to sync everything for security. I had thanked him for it. I clicked through what was left. Small clips of me cooking, folding laundry, crying on the couch after a fight. Each had a timestamp, each too perfectly framed. Someone was documenting my meltdowns. I whispered, "Why?" I thought about every payment I'd made from my account. Utilities, repairs, subscriptions, all of them under my name. I paid the phone bills that carried these betrayals. My money had become their weapon. It was like funding my own humiliation. I opened a notepad and began listing everything I could recall. The day of the first recording, what was said this morning, the missing clips. I added the exact charges from my online banking page, $82 for the family plan, $17 for cloud storage. Proof could start small. When I closed the laptop, the reflection in the dark screen caught my face again. I didn't look fragile anymore. I looked calculating. At dinner, I tested them. I said softly, "Funny how the cameras act up lately." My husband didn't flinch. "You must have pressed something wrong." "Maybe," I said, smiling. "You handle all that, don't you?" He nodded, eyes blank. My daughter asked, "Why do you even check them, Mom?" "Habit," I replied, "just like keeping receipts." The table went quiet. A pulse of unease flickered between them. I'd found the line where comfort turned into fear. After they went to bed, I walked through the hallway again. The mirror caught me in its center, older, smaller than I remembered. But my eyes were awake now. I touched the glass and whispered, "You're not invisible." Then I opened my phone's voice memo app, set it to record, and left it running on the counter. If they could collect evidence against me, I would collect the truth about them. I started recording them back. They surprised me, with guilt wrapped as love. The living room was crowded that evening, balloons everywhere, neighbors clapping, candles glowing on a 3-layer cake I hadn't baked or asked for. My husband kissed my cheek in front of everyone, and my daughter said, 53 and still our rock. The words sounded warm, but I heard the weight in them, like a script they'd agreed on. I forced a smile, cutting the cake while someone filmed on a phone. The smell of frosting and wax mixed with perfume from guests leaning too close. The laughter felt choreographed. Everyone looked perfect, rehearsed, spotless. I knew that same camera lens had once captured me begging them to stop mocking my breakdown. I couldn't stop seeing it, couldn't unhear their laughter looping in my head. When the guests left, the silence hit like a cold slap. I went to the kitchen to clean up, but my hands wouldn't move. Balloons sagged against the walls, wrappers and plates filled the sink. I saw a gift bag left near the counter. Inside, a new sweater and a card that said, "You're stronger than you think." I whispered, "Am I?" Later, they posted a birthday video online. It opened with my husband lighting the candles and ended with me blowing them out, eyes wet but smiling. The caption read, "Our rock, our heart." Comments poured in from neighbors. "You're such a lucky woman." "Beautiful family." "So much love in one home." I scrolled through, trying not to feel sick. Then I saw it, a faint reflection on the window behind us. The same phone case I'd noticed in the secret recording weeks ago, same cracked corner, same gold initials. My throat tightened. They hadn't just filmed a birthday video. They'd staged another layer of proof that I was happy, sane, stable. A lie polished for strangers. I zoomed in until the pixels blurred. "You planned this," I whispered. My daughter walked past my door later that night, laughing into her phone. I caught pieces of her words. She loved it. So emotional. Can you believe she cried?" I froze. That laugh again. The one from the audio file. The one that made my skin crawl. I sat on the bed with my tablet, opened the post again, and read every comment like it was evidence. For years, I'd kept our finances balanced by careful control, stretching paychecks, covering debts, signing checks with my name while they called it our money. Tonight, I saw how that same control worked emotionally too. They gave me gifts, praise, and staged affection like payments meant to keep me quiet. I opened my banking app out of habit. There it was again, the joint card charge from yesterday, $94 for decorations. I hadn't approved it. My own birthday was another expense billed to me. I laughed under my breath, but it wasn't humor. Even the candles came out of my pocket. At 10:20 p.m., I took a screenshot of the transaction and saved it in a folder I'd started calling Truth. It already held the recording and notes from the last 2 weeks, my private archive of betrayal. I went back to the post. Comments kept rising, people tagging friends, sharing it. Every heart icon felt like another nail sealing the lie tighter. They'd turned my image into their proof of innocence. I deleted the post. Within seconds, my phone buzzed. My husband texted, "Why did you do that? People loved it." I replied, "Because I didn't." No answer came, just the faint sound of footsteps in the hallway. Then a knock. "You okay in there?" my daughter asked softly. "Fine," I said. "You should thank Dad for the video," she added. "I already did," I lied. When she walked away, I locked my door. I stared at my reflection in the mirror, the flicker of candlelight still faint on my cheeks. That image would have fooled anyone but me. I opened the group chat and pressed leave. Then one by one, I blocked them all: husband, daughter, sister. The digital silence that followed was heavier than any noise. For the first time, I felt something close to control again. I blocked them all before midnight. Secrets always have a drawer. Mine did too. It was late afternoon when I went searching for a folder of therapy receipts. I needed to file them for reimbursement, one of the few things that still felt like order. My husband's desk sat in the corner of the study, neat and locked, the same way he kept conversations, tidy and controlled. I'd never had reason to open it until that day. I remembered he'd left his keys in the kitchen bowl earlier. I told myself it wasn't snooping, just practicality. But when I unlocked the drawer, the air changed. Old wood, paper, dust. It all carried a smell that belonged to secrets, not storage. Inside lay a neat stack of files. My name was written on the top folder in his handwriting. I pulled it out slowly. The first page was a photocopy of my prescription from my therapist. The next, a printed email exchange between me and my counselor. The last, photos. Photos of me sitting in the therapy office, head down, tissue in hand. My stomach twisted. "How did he even get these?" I whispered. My counselor's office was confidential. It hit me. He must have accessed her records somehow, or taken the photos himself. I sat on the floor, folder open, papers scattered. Every document screamed one thing: preparation. He wasn't just collecting them out of curiosity. He was building a file, a record to prove something about me, maybe that I was unstable. That would explain the missing recordings, the whispers, the strange calm in his voice lately. I ran my fingers across the paper edges, trying not to tear them. My fingertips burned from touching something that shouldn't exist. The folder felt heavier than it should have, as if it carried every argument we'd ever had. He'd been planning this. My therapy, my confessions, my trust, all reduced to exhibits in a case I hadn't even known I was on trial for. At 6:40 p.m., I heard the front door. My heart jumped. I gathered everything and slid the folder back into place, shutting the drawer carefully. My hand shook so badly that the key slipped, landing on the carpet with a faint clink. "Elaine?" he called out. "You home?" "In the kitchen," I said, forcing my voice steady. He walked in, loosened his tie, kissed my forehead lightly. "Dinner soon?" "Almost," I replied. My throat was dry. I couldn't look at him. I spent that evening cooking by muscle memory. The sound of chopping vegetables and boiling water filled the silence. He sat at the table, reading something on his phone, his expression unreadable. I wanted to ask, "Why did you do it?" But I knew better. He'd deny it, twist it, make it sound like paranoia. That was his skill, turning my truth into fiction. After dinner, when he went upstairs, I returned to the study. I unlocked the drawer again, took the folder, and replaced it with a stack of blank papers. Then I carried the real one to the kitchen. I opened the flour tin, the one no one but me ever touched, and slid the folder inside, beneath the white powder. I closed it gently, feeling like I'd buried evidence of a crime. I wiped the counter clean, hiding every trace of disturbance. My hands smelled faintly of dust and fear. That night, lying in bed beside him, I couldn't close my eyes. I kept thinking about every phone call, every time he'd asked casually, "How was therapy today?" He already knew. He'd known everything before I said it. At 11:15 p.m., the house went quiet. I stared at the ceiling, realizing what the drawer meant. I wasn't paranoid. I was being watched, studied, and prepared for destruction. In the dark, I whispered to myself, "No more unlocked doors." And from that night on, I stopped sleeping with the door unlocked. Help came from someone who once warned me. Ruth's name flashed on my phone just after lunch. I hadn't heard from her in months. She used to be my coworker back when I still believed the world outside my home was safe. Her voice came through steady, calm, like it used to during long office nights. "I saw the birthday video," she said. "You didn't look happy, Elaine." My breath caught. "You noticed? I've seen that look before. Record everything." Those words snapped something awake inside me. She didn't ask if I was overreacting, didn't soften her tone. She believed me before I'd even explained. She sent an email that afternoon with a short message. No questions, no pity. Just a number. "Call this line. They help women in complicated homes." Below it, she'd written, "Keep copies of proof off-site. Don't confront too soon." I stared at her message until my screen dimmed. The cursor blinked over her name like a quiet lifeline. That night, I printed the email and tucked it into my notebook. My hand shook slightly, but for the first time in weeks, the shaking came from adrenaline, not fear. At 8:45 p.m., I sat at the kitchen table with a pen, a spiral pad, and the folder I'd hidden inside the flour tin. The house was quiet. I wrote down everything I could remember: dates, remarks, receipts. I listed which bills I'd paid this month: $300 for the mortgage, $86 for electricity, $29 for his streaming subscription I never used. Every line felt like reclaiming a fragment of myself. I paused when I reached the word therapy. I'd spent thousands trying to make peace inside a war zone. My counselor once said, "Control hides in kindness." I finally understood what she meant. My husband's generosity always came with fine print. His name on every contract, his card for every payment, his claim over every decision. My daughter had even told me once, "Dad says it's easier if he handles the money." I'd nodded, tired, letting it happen. Now, writing it all down, I saw the pattern. Every dollar I earned went into accounts under his management. My income, my taxes, my savings. He'd folded them into our shared finances years ago. Ruth's voice echoed in my head. "Record everything." I opened my old laptop, logged into the joint account, and checked the balances. The savings sat at $18,540. The checking account, $624, both under his access. My name was secondary, like a quiet witness. I opened a new browser tab and searched for local banks. The process was simple: a few forms, a security question, a password. When the confirmation email came, it felt like holding my breath after years underwater. I transferred $50 from my personal card, one I'd kept for online orders, never used much. It wasn't much money, but it was mine. The screen read, "Deposit confirmed." That small click felt louder than any argument we'd ever had. I whispered, "It starts here." At 9:10 p.m., Ruth texted again. "You're not crazy, Elaine, just cautious." I smiled faintly. "Thank you," I typed back. Then in my notebook, I made 2 columns: their control and my proof. Under the first, I listed everything he'd claimed: the house deed, the insurance, my therapy records. Under the second, I wrote, "folder in flower tin, new account, Ruth's number." Each word steadied me. I wasn't collecting pain anymore. I was documenting truth. When I closed the notebook, I noticed my husband's laptop open on the counter, still glowing. I didn't touch it, but I saw an unread email in his inbox preview line, something about renewal and camera plan. I felt my chest tighten. They were still recording me. I took one slow breath, then unplugged the router, letting the house fall into quiet darkness. For the first time, I didn't panic. Tomorrow, I'd call the legal hotline. Maybe they'd tell me what my options were. Maybe not. But tonight, I had proof, an ally, and $50 that no one else could touch. I looked at the notebook one last time and whispered, "They won't see this coming." I decided to move money they didn't know about. Truth doesn't hide. People do. After Ruth's call, I started watching my own house the way I used to watch other people at work. Quietly, carefully, waiting for small mistakes. The living room lamp had a hollow base, just big enough for a small camera I'd ordered with overnight shipping. It arrived in a plain box, billed under a different name. $48, plus tax, money that didn't exist to them, withdrawn from my new account. I set the camera inside the lamp one Saturday morning while they were out. My hands shook, but I told myself, "You're not spying, you're surviving." I aimed it toward the couch and table where they usually sat for their quiet talks. The light hummed faintly when I plugged it in. I checked the angle once, twice, and then walked away. By Monday evening, I had the first recording. My husband and daughter were sitting together, the way they always did when I wasn't in the room. The video showed them sipping tea, her notebook open, his voice calm, low. "She needs rest," he said. "We should move her things upstairs. It's quieter there." My daughter nodded. "You mean isolate her?" He smiled. "For peace." My throat burned watching it. Their tone was gentle, too gentle. That fake concern people use when they've already decided what's best for you. I fast-forwarded, heart pounding. At one point, they laughed about how I'd started talking to herself more lately. My daughter mimicked my voice. They both laughed. It was cruel and ordinary, like it wasn't even new to them. I paused the video. The screen froze on their smiles, that lamp glow between them. I stared at it for a long time before whispering, "You recorded me. Now I record you." That night, after they went to bed, I copied the footage onto a flash drive I'd bought weeks ago from a discount store. I labeled it with one word: truth. Then I sealed it inside an envelope addressed to Ruth. The next morning, I walked to the post office before sunrise. The air was cold and clean. It felt like I was sneaking freedom into the world. The clerk handed me the postage slip. "Anything valuable inside?" he asked casually. "Just a memory," I said. I kept the receipt in my wallet next to the $50 deposit record from my new bank account. Tiny proof that I was rebuilding something of my own. When I came home, the house was still. My husband was at work, my daughter asleep. I made coffee and sat at the table, staring at the lamp. The faint hum sounded different now, not menacing, protective. By noon, my phone buzzed. A text from Ruth. "Got the envelope. I'll keep it safe. Make copies next time. Next time." The words meant there would be one, a future where I wasn't trapped inside their version of events. At 3:00 p.m., my daughter came downstairs yawning. "You're up early," she said. "Couldn't sleep." "Too much coffee again?" she teased. "Maybe too much truth," I replied. She didn't get it. She moved to open the curtains, letting light spill across the table. For a second, I panicked that it would expose the camera, but she didn't notice. She just kept scrolling her phone. I exhaled slowly, pretending to read a recipe book. That evening, while cooking dinner, I glanced toward the lamp again. I thought about how I used to associate that warm light with safety. Now it meant awareness, watching, evidence. After dinner, I went upstairs to my room and opened the drawer where I kept the flash drive's twin, a backup copy. I'd planned to move it into the safe that night, but when I reached for it, the drawer was empty. I froze, checked the back, the sides, nothing. The flash drive was gone. I ran through every possibility. Maybe I'd misplaced it. Maybe I'd left it in the laptop. But deep down I knew. Someone had found it. Someone had been in this room. When I walked back into the hallway, I heard faint laughter downstairs, the same soft tone from the video. I leaned against the wall, my hands gripping the railing. The lamp glowed below, bright and harmless, like it had nothing to hide. And all I could think was, if they knew I'd seen them, the game had just changed again. The flash drive was gone from my drawer by morning. Someone had broken into my private life again. The drawer that once held my flash drive sat open, the metal lock twisted like a broken rib. I ran my fingers along the edge, feeling the splinters of wood. Even the smell of paper had changed, cold, sharp, like panic left too long in the air. Downstairs, my husband made breakfast. "You're quiet," he said. "Did you come into my room last night?" He looked up, steady as stone. "Why would I?" "Because the lock's broken." He shrugged. "Maybe it jammed." That word, maybe, had become his favorite weapon. When I checked the mail that afternoon, I saw it. The envelope I'd sent to Ruth, now half torn, the stamp peeled away. It looked like it had been opened and sealed again. Someone had found it before it left the house. Someone wanted me to know. I sat on the steps holding the ruined envelope until my hands stopped shaking. Then I called the hotline number Ruth had given me. A woman answered. Her voice was calm, firm. "You're describing coercive control," she said, "and it's illegal." I didn't cry. I just listened. She told me to start documenting again, but to keep copies outside the house. "Photograph your own notes. Email them to yourself. Keep receipts somewhere safe." She gave me the number of a legal caseworker who could walk me through options. When I hung up, the clock read just past 10 o'clock a.m., the same time I used to start work before my husband suggested I retire early. I thought about how easily he'd turn my routine into isolation. I made the call to the caseworker right after lunch. Her name was Denise. "You're not alone," she said. "You're just early in the process. Most women don't even know what's happening until much later." "I know too much," I whispered. "Then use that," she said. "Knowledge is leverage." She explained the cost of a private consultation, $180 for the first hour. I hesitated. That was almost everything left in my secret account. Then I heard my own voice saying, "Every dollar now is armor." That evening, I transferred the money online. My hands didn't tremble this time. I took a screenshot of the confirmation page and saved it under a new folder titled Independent. When I went back downstairs, my husband was reading by the window. The late afternoon light traced his profile, the same calm, ordinary look that used to comfort me. "Did you get the mail today?" I asked. He smiled without looking up. "Bills, I think. Nothing exciting." "Then who touched my envelope?" His page turned slowly. "Maybe you forgot you mailed it." That word again. Maybe. I walked into the kitchen, opened a new notebook, and began to write. Drawer lock broken. Envelope tampered. Conversation deflective. The more I wrote, the clearer it became. This wasn't about evidence anymore. It was about survival in plain sight. At midnight, I checked my phone. An email from Denise had arrived. "Your next step is to secure off-site storage for documents. Keep digital backups. Be discreet." I replied immediately. "Understood. I'll start tomorrow." I went to the living room. The lamp I'd used for the camera sat where it always did, harmless, familiar. But now, every object in this house felt wired to someone else's power. I picked up the torn envelope again. The paper felt rough against my skin, like sandpaper on a wound. I tucked it into my pocket as a reminder, proof that proof could vanish. When I lay in bed, I thought about Ruth. I imagined her opening an empty envelope, confused, wondering why I'd gone silent. But I hadn't gone silent. I was louder now, just not with words, with actions, with records, with steps they couldn't trace. By morning, I decided something else. If they wanted to erase me in private, I'd expose them in public. Next time, I'd record them in public. He slammed his hand on the table and called me insane. The entire restaurant went silent. The sound of the impact cut through the chatter, through the clinking of plates and glasses, through everything. My wine glass tipped, spilling a dark stain across the white tablecloth. I could smell the bitterness of it, sharp and sour. "Stop embarrassing yourself," he said, his face red. "I'm asking questions, not starting a fight," I replied. "You twist everything," he snapped. "You need help." The waiter froze mid-step, eyes darting between us. My daughter's hand trembled around her fork. "Dad, please," she whispered. But he wasn't listening. He wanted witnesses. He wanted to break me in public and make it look like concern. I stared at the stains spreading across the tablecloth. It looked like proof, quiet and undeniable. I reached for my phone and hit record. His tone changed instantly. "What are you doing?" "Protecting myself," I said. "Turn it off." "No." For a moment, no one moved. Then he stood up, tossed a few bills on the table, and stormed out. The waiter exhaled, relief flickering across his face. My daughter buried her face in her hands. I sat there for a moment, breathing slowly. The smell of spilled wine lingered. When the waiter returned with a damp cloth, I asked for the receipt. He handed it to me gently, as if handling evidence. On the drive home, my daughter didn't speak. Halfway through the trip, she finally said, "You shouldn't record him." "Why not?" "He says you provoke him." I gripped the steering wheel tighter. If he's telling the truth, the recording will prove it. Back home, I scanned the receipt, saved it in my secure folder, and texted Ruth. "He lost control in public. I have it on video." She called within minutes. "Send nothing yet," she said. "Witnesses matter more than recordings. People believe people." "So what do I do?" "You file a harassment statement. You've got a location, time, and proof of purchase. That's evidence in plain sight." The next morning, at 9:30, I called the hotline again and spoke to Denise. She guided me through the online complaint form. "Keep your wording factual," she advised. "No emotion, just what happened." It asked for the date, time, and witnesses. I typed it all. The restaurant's name, the bill total, 112.47, and the waiter's description. The small things suddenly mattered. They grounded the truth. Later that afternoon, I went to the kitchen sink with the half-finished bottle of wine from the night before. As I poured it down the drain, the smell rose again, rich, acidic, familiar. For years, that smell had meant celebration. Now it just meant control. I scrubbed the sink until the scent faded. Then I looked at my reflection in the dark window. For the first time in a long time, I didn't see confusion looking back. I saw focus. At dinner, my daughter barely touched her food. "He says he's sorry," she murmured. "For what?" "For losing his temper." "Not for humiliating me?" She didn't answer. When she went to bed, I opened my laptop again. The video from the restaurant loaded on the screen. His hand slamming down, my calm voice, the waiter's frozen stare. It was all there. I played it twice, then closed the file and copied it onto a new flash drive. I sealed it inside an envelope labeled Public. I wasn't hiding anymore. I was preparing. That night, as the clock crept past midnight, I checked my email one last time. There was a message from Ruth. "Once it's on record, he can't rewrite it." I whispered to myself, "Then that's where it'll stay." The house was still, but I could feel the shift, like the air had decided to stop obeying him. Next call came from the family lawyer. They accused me of defamation for telling the truth. The envelope came in the morning mail, heavy and deliberate. The return address printed in crisp black letters, his lawyer's firm. I sat at the kitchen table for a full minute before opening it. The paper inside smelled faintly of ink and starch, clean and impersonal. The letter said I had caused reputational harm and must cease and desist from spreading false narratives. It warned that if I didn't issue a public apology within 7 days, they'd take me to court. I read it twice, then a third time. My first reaction wasn't fear, it was disbelief. After everything he'd done, the recordings, the isolation, the control, he still wanted to paint himself as the victim. When Ruth came by that afternoon, I showed her the letter. She skimmed it, eyes narrowing. "They're bluffing," she said. "Then why do I feel cornered?" "Because it's meant to make you feel that way. Don't answer it alone. Let me call someone." She dialed a number on her phone and handed it to me. A woman from a legal aid clinic picked up. Her tone was steady, professional. "Bring everything you have," she said. "We'll review it together. You're not the first woman to get one of these." That sentence, "You're not the first," gave me more comfort than I expected. The next morning, at exactly 10:15, I sat across from the clinic attorney. Her office was small, but warm, papers stacked in neat piles. I handed her my folder, the therapy notes, the receipts, the photos, the video clips. She looked through each one carefully, saying nothing for a while. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm but direct. "This isn't defamation. This is intimidation. What he's doing has a name, legal abuse. We'll respond formally." I nodded, even though my stomach twisted. "Will it cost me?" "Not for us. We're pro bono, but it may take time. Are you ready for that?" "I've already paid in years," I said. "Time's all I have left." She smiled, just a little. "Then we'll start today." She drafted a response on her screen, reading parts aloud. Each word she typed felt like air returning to my lungs. "Our client disputes the validity of your claims. Our client reserves all rights to disclose supporting evidence." I could almost see his face when he read it, how it would shake the certainty he'd built his lies on. Before leaving, I signed a release form allowing them to handle the correspondence. My hands didn't shake this time. The pen felt solid, like a small weapon made of ink and will. When I stepped outside, the afternoon sun caught on the glass doors. I realized it had been months since I'd walked into an institution that believed me. For so long, I'd been the whisper, the accusation, the woman too emotional to trust. Now I was a case number, a client, a person with documentation and defense. That night, I went over my finances again. I had $300 left in my personal account, enough for groceries and one consultation if things dragged on. But this time, the numbers didn't scare me. They represented independence, not scarcity. Every dollar still mine was proof he hadn't erased me completely. At 7:00 p.m., Ruth called to check in. "How did it go?" "They're taking my case." "I told you, you're stronger than you think." "I'm tired of being strong," I said softly. "Then let the law do it for you." I sat in silence after the call, staring at the letter now sealed in a folder marked Evidence. It no longer looked like a threat. It looked like a milestone. For the first time, I didn't shred the envelope. I placed it on my desk beside the attorney's business card. Proof that my story had entered their world. Official, documented, undeniable. As the clock moved toward midnight, I realized something else. He had pushed me so far that even fear had lost its grip. The silence he'd relied on was gone. They wanted silence. I chose court. He couldn't look me in the eye anymore. When we stepped into the courtroom, I could feel his stare flicker past me and land on the floor instead. The air inside was cold, controlled. Every sound, the shuffle of papers, the faint coughs, seemed louder than it should have been. The judge sat straight ahead, her hands folded neatly on the bench. The gavel rested like a quiet warning. I clutched my file binder so tightly that the edge marked my palm. Inside it was the certified recording, the one that had survived every denial. Ruth sat behind me in the gallery. Her presence steadied me more than any words could. When the clerk called our names, I stood. My voice shook at first, but steadied once I began. He recorded me without consent. He shared those clips. He mocked me. He tried to interrupt, leaning forward in his chair. "That's not true," he barked. The judge lifted her hand. "You'll have your turn." I kept speaking. I was called unstable. I was told to stop imagining things, but I have the audio here, certified and verified. It's not imagination, it's evidence. The file binder clicked open. The clerk played a short segment. His voice filled the room, cruel and laughing, recounting what he'd done as if it were a game. My daughter, sitting behind the rail, covered her mouth. When she heard his tone, she started to cry. He finally looked at me then, just for a moment. The confidence was gone. His face, usually so sure of its control, looked hollow. The judge spoke again, her tone steady. "You both will listen." Another clip played, the one from the dinner, when he slammed his hand on the table. The court reporter typed fast, the words echoing in real time. The sound was undeniable, his own voice shouting over mine. He whispered to his attorney, but the judge's gavel tapped once. "Enough!" The sound cracked through the courtroom like thunder. I took a slow breath. "All I wanted," I said softly, "was acknowledgement, not revenge, not ruin, just recognition that this happened." The judge looked between us, then spoke carefully. "The court finds sufficient cause to grant a restraining boundary for 12 months. Both parties are mandated to attend counseling sessions. Any further contact must be documented through legal counsel only." My knees almost gave out. It wasn't victory, but it was something solid. It was official. When we stepped out into the hallway, reporters waited near the door. Their questions blurred into noise. Ruth guided me past them toward the elevators. "You did it," she whispered. "No," I said. "I told it." As we rode down, I stared at my reflection in the elevator wall, older, exhausted, but whole. For the first time, I didn't see fear there. I saw distance. At 2:45 that afternoon, I stood outside the courthouse, clutching the same binder that had once felt like a burden. The sky was overcast, but the air was light. My daughter came up beside me quietly. "I didn't know it was that bad," she said. "I know," I replied. "Now you do." She reached for my hand, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. The crowd noise faded behind us. The only thing I could hear was the echo of the gavel in my mind, steady, final, like a heartbeat. When I got home, I placed the binder on my desk, still closed but heavy with proof. The silence in the house no longer felt oppressive. It felt earned. Freedom sounded like silence. Silence used to scare me. Now it heals. After they left, the house stood still for days. Every sound was mine again. The hum of the refrigerator, the soft creak of the hallway floor, the quiet drip from the kitchen tap. For years I had feared these sounds, mistaking them for loneliness. Now they sounded like ownership. The morning after the movers came, I walked through each room slowly. Their things were gone. No more shirts on the back of chairs, no half-finished mugs on the counter. Just space. Real, breathing space. I found a single key on the windowsill, one of the spares he'd always kept hidden from me. I placed it on the table beside the stack of mail and smiled. It was strange how small control could look when it wasn't yours anymore. The fridge door still held the court order, pinned with a magnet shaped like a sunflower. Restraining boundary, active 12 months. The paper fluttered slightly when I opened the door, like it needed air too. It wasn't just legal protection, it was proof that I'd survived something real. At 8:30 that morning, I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, the same one where I'd once begged to be heard, the same one where arguments had become performances. I ran my fingers along the wood grain and whispered, "You're safe now." Bills came later that week. Utilities, water, and the lawyer's invoice for $147. I paid them one by one, online, without the shaking hands I used to hide. Each payment felt like reclaiming another inch of ground. Peace had a cost, but it was finally worth paying. I opened an old cabinet above the stove and found my recipe box. Inside, my handwriting stared back at me. Little notes from years ago. Add more garlic. Don't forget the parsley. I laughed out loud, the sound bouncing off the empty walls. I hadn't heard my own laughter here in so long that it startled me. That night, I decided to cook something simple. Chicken and rice, nothing fancy. I set 1 plate, not 3. The smell filled the kitchen, and for once, no one complained it was too salty. I ate slowly, each bite tasting like relief. After dinner, I gathered a few forgotten things from the living room: his old tie, a broken picture frame, a coaster with a burn mark. I packed them into a box and set it by the door for donation. It didn't feel like grief. It felt like release. At 9:15, Ruth called. "How's the quiet?" she asked. "Loud," I said, laughing again. "But it's a good kind of loud." "You sound lighter." "I am. It's not that everything's fixed. It's that nothing's hidden anymore." Before bed, I wrote a note to myself and pinned it next to the court order. You kept your promise to survive. The 2 papers looked strange together, one official, one personal, but they told the same story. The next morning, sunlight slipped through the kitchen blinds. I didn't flinch at it this time. I just stood there, barefoot on the tile, watching dust move in the air. The house felt honest now, scarred, quiet, but honest. I picked up the key from the table, turned it over in my hand, and placed it in a drawer. "You don't get to open doors anymore," I whispered. The refrigerator hummed behind me, steady and alive. I poured another cup of coffee and leaned against the counter, breathing in the stillness. It wasn't emptiness I felt. It was ownership of my own space, my own name, my own quiet. But closure needed one more step. I shared my story, unedited, on the same page they used. It was close to midnight when I hit upload. The glow of the screen lit the room, soft but steady. My hands didn't shake this time. The upload icon blinked once, then turned blue. For months, I had imagined this moment, how it would feel to speak without permission, without fear of being corrected or silenced. I had recorded it earlier that evening. No script, no filters, just me, sitting at the same kitchen table where so many lies had been told about me. "I'm not here to accuse," I began in the video. "I just want the truth to live somewhere visible." My voice was even, calm. I told what happened in plain words: the recordings, the letter, the court, the silence. I didn't name names. I didn't have to. I uploaded it on their favorite platform, the one they used to humiliate me. It felt poetic, but not cruel. It wasn't vengeance. It was balance. The first comment came within minutes. "I remember her story. I believe her." Then another. "This happens more than people think." By 1:00 a.m., hundreds had watched. Messages flooded in, women, men, strangers, sharing their own experiences, thanking me for speaking. The same audience that once praised his charm was now reading between the lines. They recognized the tone of manipulation. They saw the pattern. The shift was quiet, but powerful. When Ruth called the next morning, her voice sounded lighter. "It's everywhere," she said. "Do you realize what you did?" "I told the truth," I said. "You reclaimed your name. I didn't even use it." At 9:40, I checked the numbers again. The views had passed 10,000. I didn't feel pride. I felt relief. The story no longer belonged to me. It belonged to the record. I read through the comments, one after another. Some were angry on my behalf, others were reflective. But every line carried the same undercurrent. Someone had finally listened. He tried to respond. I saw the first attempt go live, a short post calling me vindictive, claiming I'd twisted events. But the replies underneath told a different story. People asked questions he couldn't answer. Within an hour, the post vanished. By the second day, his profile went private. Then her account disappeared too. The silence they had once used to control me now turned against them. I didn't celebrate it, but I noticed it. The light from the screen spilled across the desk as new messages came in. A journalist reached out asking for an interview. I declined. "The video is enough," I wrote back. The world can decide for itself. That night, I sat in the same chair again and played the video once more, watching it as if it weren't me. The pauses, the honesty, the restraint, it all felt cleaner than the chaos that came before. I hadn't shouted or accused. I had simply stated the truth, and that had been enough to shift the ground beneath them. At 10:00 p.m., I turned off the lights and stood by the window. Outside, the city glowed in pockets of brightness, like pixels on a massive, breathing screen. Somewhere in that digital web, my story lived now, untouchable, unedited, permanent. Ruth texted one last time before I went to bed. "How does it feel?" I replied, like I finally got my voice back. I scrolled once more through the comments, ordinary people standing where silence used to live. Then I closed the app, knowing I wouldn't have to open it again for validation. The proof was no longer in documents or court orders. It was in the collective echo of people saying, "We see you." By morning, they deleted every trace of their laughter. I played the old recording one last time. The voices echoed faintly through the kitchen, mocking, distant, already fading. They used to pierce through me like knives. Now they sounded like background noise from another lifetime. The sunlight hit the countertop, bright and simple, stretching across the same space that had once felt like a prison. I held my coffee cup with both hands, its warmth grounding me. The file had followed me through every phase: fear, denial, anger, proof, justice. It had been my weapon, my shield, my evidence. But now it was just data on a screen. For a moment, I closed my eyes and listened again. His voice laughed, hers followed, sharp and smug. Then mine, faint but steady. "You don't get to define me anymore." That part still made me pause. I wasn't that trembling woman now. I was someone else, someone whole. At 8:10 that morning, I pressed delete. The system asked, "Are you sure?" "Yes," I whispered. Proof served its time. The screen went blank, quiet. The absence of that file didn't scare me. It felt clean. The story no longer needed evidence. It had lived, been witnessed, and recorded in memory where it mattered most. I took another sip of coffee. The taste was familiar, slightly bitter, but alive. Outside, a bird landed on the window ledge, tapping once against the glass before flying off. The morning light followed it, brightening the floor tiles in soft waves. My bills for the month sat neatly stacked beside the coffee maker. Rent, utilities, and the legal clinic's donation slip. All marked, paid. For once, those numbers didn't represent loss. They represented independence. Every dollar had bought something priceless. Peace. Ruth had texted late last night. "You did everything right," she wrote. I hadn't answered. There was nothing left to explain. The silence between us wasn't distance anymore. It was understanding. I walked to the fridge and looked at the paper still pinned there, the restraining order, now wrinkled from months of opening and closing the door. It had once felt like armor. Now it looked like a certificate of closure. I left it there anyway, not as fear, but as history. The clock above the sink read 9 o'clock. I decided to open the window for the first time in weeks. The air moved through the room, cool and new. I let it touch my face, breathing in deeply. The world outside didn't look dangerous anymore. It looked possible. The phone buzzed once with a new notification. Someone sharing my video again, a reminder that the story kept traveling without me. I smiled. Let it go where it needs to. Let it help who it must. I sat back down, holding the mug close, the warmth steady against my palms. The light on the wall kept shifting, softening the edges of everything. For years, I'd lived in reaction, to cruelty, to silence, to proof. Now, I was living in choice. The house was quiet. And finally, so was I. Did you enjoy this story? Tell me which city you're listening from. I read every comment. If the story touched you, you can support the channel with a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this every day. Your encouragement really helps. I'd love to hear your thoughts and what moment stayed with you. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's plenty more on the channel as well. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. See you in the next life story. With respect and gratitude,